I'm 32-year-old Avery Mitchell, and after my parents depleted my college funds to support my brother, Justin, I had to start over. My flat in downtown Boston, a representation of my freedom, was finally mine after years of arduous struggle. Then my doorbell suddenly rang one Sunday morning. My parents were standing there. Determination set in my father's face. Behind him, my mother fidgets uneasily. Any notion that the past was behind us was destroyed by what they wanted next. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this story. As I explain how my parents' demand impacted everything, please leave a comment below. I'd love to know where you're viewing from. By no means is my flat large or opulent, but it is mine. Each inch of the 800 feet too symbolizes years of sacrifice, meticulous budgeting, and innumerable overtime hours. After 12-hour workdays, I painted the kitchen cabinets late at night and polished the hardwood floors on the weekends. Each piece of furniture was carefully chosen from secondhand shops and was progressively replaced as my income rose. The dynamics in our family were very evident when I was growing up. There was nothing that Justin, the golden child, could do wrong. On the other hand, I was supposed to be the responsible party who never caused problems. My parents consoled him when I sought for assistance with college applications after he smashed the family car when he was 16. Since I was the intelligent one, I was told to solve it on my own. Throughout our childhood, the trend persisted. My academic competitions were hardly recognized. While Justin's soccer matches were family occasions, my academic accomplishments accumulated dust in a box beneath my bed, whereas his bedroom walls were adorned in participation awards. My parents always had different expectations, but it didn't mean they didn't love me. It all came to a climax when I was 17 years old. Despite receiving a partial scholarship to Northeastern University, I still needed to use my college funds to pay the remaining balance. I had been preparing for this day for years, keeping up flawless grades and taking on part-time jobs to supplement my income. My parents then seated me at our kitchen table one evening. The recollection is still clear. Their uneasy looks, the fading flowery tablecloth, and the yellow overhead light. Avery, Justin's situation has changed. My mom, Karen said. Her wedding band was being twisted nervously by her fingers. Robert, my father, got right to the point. There was some gambling that your brother got involved in. He was a dangerous individual, a substantial sum of money. What is the amount? Sensing the direction of this conversation, I asked. $30,000, my dad said. The sum was too small to meet my eyes, but it was nearly identical to the money in my college fund that my grandparents had established for me and that my parents had added to over the years. Your college fund must be used, my mother said quietly. Only for a short time. Before you go back to school in the fall, we will repay it. I nodded in spite of the sinking sensation in my gut. Family comes first. Justin was in difficulty. They continually told me, but the money was never given back. Along with 5 other students, I rented a small room in a house that fall rather than moving into a dorm room. With a full course load, I worked 2 jobs bartending at night and serving tables at a diner in the mornings. Sleep turned into an expensive luxury. Every semester was a tightrope walk in terms of money. I worked additional shifts, applied for every scholarship, ate ramen for weeks on end, and occasionally had to choose between groceries and textbooks. Justin, meanwhile, left community college and lived at home, taking on odd jobs here and there in between long stretches of unemployment. I got an entry-level job at a financial consulting firm after I graduated. I recognized the absurdity of giving financial security advice to others when my own had been so unstable. However, I was able to succeed in part because I had personal experience with the negative effects of bad financial choices. For 3 years, I lived in a small apartment with 4 roommates, trying to save as much money as I could. 5 years ago, I sobbed when I got the keys to my small 1-bedroom apartment after I was finally approved for a mortgage. The first concrete evidence that my efforts were having an impact. My relationship with my family became friendly but aloof over time. Vacations, occasional phone conversations, but always with boundaries in place, with my parents continuously coming to his aid. Justin kept up his cycle of employment and debt. 3 months ago, I obtained a long-awaited promotion to senior consultant. I had to prove myself for years before I felt safe. I had a healthy emergency money. My retirement funds were gradually increasing, and I had even begun organizing my first trip in 5 years. At last, life was steady, predictable, and completely up to me. That is, until my doorbell rang on that fateful Sunday morning. The chime of the doorbell interrupted my quiet Sunday morning routine. Hair still wet from the shower, coffee in hand. When I opened the door, I noticed my parents standing in the hallway, my father pacing angrily from foot to foot. I wasn't expecting anyone to peek through the peephole. The tension was evident right away. Unexpected visit. I forced a grin as I spoke. Karen, my mother, gave me a firm hug. She has worn the same flowery perfume all my life, taking me back in time to my early years. Robert, my father, nodded sternly, his eyes already looking about my apartment. He said, "Nice place you've got here." But there was something strange and almost bitter in his tone. "Coffee," I offered, hoping to lessen the awkwardness. "There's no time for coffee," my father said sternly. My mom gave him a glance. "Robert is saying that we have a lot to talk about." My parents sat on the sofa as we settled into my tiny living room, and I took the armchair across from them. My mother's hands curled uncomfortably on her lap, a typical warning sign of impending terrible news. My father sat forward, elbows on knees, his mouth set in determination. "Avery, how have you been?" My mom inquired. "It's a beautiful apartment. Thank you. I've behaved well. Actually, I just received a promotion." "That's fantastic." "Honey," she grinned. However, it missed her eyes. "Enough small talk," my dad said. "We must talk about Justin." I felt cold when my brother's name was spoken. I'd learned that conversation throughout the years. This was never a good way to start. "How about him?" "With caution," I asked. My dad cleared his throat. "Your sibling is having problems. Bad news." "What sort of issue?" However, I was already aware of the solution. My mom jumped right in. "He became interested in some financial ventures, an opportunity for company that looked promising, taking a chance." My father explained. His voice tense with annoyance, began with investing plans. Ended up trying to win it back at casinos. The old tale came to pass. Justin had convinced some pals to invest in a business venture, something involving cryptocurrencies that my parents didn't completely grasp. He tried gambling to recover the losses once the venture failed, which led to him getting into even more debt. "What is the amount?" I posed the identical query that I had at the age of 17. My father said, $150,000. I almost strangled dollar. My mom gave a pitiful nod. "Some of the people he borrowed from?" "Avery. They're not kind people. My father said that they are threatening to take legal action, and worse. Now, where is Justin remaining at our home?" My mom answered, "He's too terrified to go to his flat." My dad leaned over. "We've done everything we can. We took out a second mortgage on the house and spent all of our savings. However, it is insufficient. We're too elderly to be eligible for any additional loans," my mother added. My stomach began to drop, and it got worse. A part of me hoped I was mistaken, even though I already knew what was about to happen. "What exactly are you asking me?" I required them to state it clearly. My father looked directly into my eyes. "You must sell your apartment to us." The words hovered in the air, audacious and audacious. "I want to sell my apartment." Confident that I had misheard, I repeated, "There is no other option." My mom begged, "Justin might end up behind bars, or worse." My father went on, "You've got equity," as though he were describing a straightforward mathematical issue. "The value of real estate in this neighborhood has increased. You would earn a sufficient profit to pay off Justin's debts." "And precisely where do I reside?" I raised my voice and asked. Even though I tried to remain composed, My mother advised you to return back home or rent for a bit until you had more money. Return home. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I work in Boston and am 32 years old. 3 hours each way from Hartford is too long for me to commute. You would find a solution. My dad brushed it off. We're talking about this family. And what about Justin, I inquired. What's his plan to pay me back? My dad dismissively waved his hand. He will stand up again. He always does. It always does. When has he ever been able to stand on his own 2 feet without your help? I repeated incredulously. My mother warned me not to speak in such a manner about your brother. Avery won't be asked. My dad's voice grew stern. In any case, it's family money. Family funds. It was a smack of a phrase. During my college years, I held 3 jobs after you took money from my college account to pay off Justin's gambling bills. To save for this property, I put in years of 60-hour work weeks. What is this family money exactly? You were reared by us, my dad retorted. His face was flushed. We provided you with a roof. There is food on the table. Without us, you wouldn't have anything. I was momentarily stunned by the sheer bluster of his assertion. I thought I had processed the betrayal and fury years ago, but it returned with a vengeance. You ought to go, in my opinion, I said softly, trying not to lose my cool. Until this is resolved, we will not be departing. My dad was adamant. Nothing needs to be settled, I answered. I have no plans to sell my apartment, not for Justin, not for everyone. Soft sniffles turned into sobs as my mother started to cry. It was a tried and true strategy that had proven successful innumerable times throughout my youth. Do you wish for a brother to die? In between sobs, she asked. Is that what you want? Despite being so obvious, the emotional manipulation was nonetheless successful. Doubt began to creep in. Was I being self-centered? Was my brother's safety more essential than property? But I was reminded that this was not about the flat by another voice in my head, the same voice that had led me through years of independence. This was about an infinite cycle that would continue as long as I permitted it. Finally, I said, I'll give it some thought. Only on the discussion. I require time. Taking my remarks as a sign of surrender, my father stood up. By the end of the week, we must have a response. Justin doesn't have much time at the moment. Their expectations weighed heavily on me as I shut the door behind them. My brother's decisions once again put the life I had so meticulously crafted in jeopardy. Inside of me, the old emotions of guilt and hatred fought a war, but this time, something else was emerging. Willpower. My phone rang nonstop for 3 days following my parents' unannounced visit. I ignored every call they made while I tried to think through my feelings and weigh my options. They returned, this time without warning. To my apartment on the 4th day, we need an answer. Avery. As soon as I opened the door, my father made a demand. I needed time. I told you. Reluctantly, I allowed them to enter. Time isn't a luxury we have. He lost his temper. Justin's debtors are impatient. My mom's appearance worsened. Her normally tidy appearance was unkempt, with dark circles under her eyes. Avery, please. If it wasn't serious, we wouldn't inquire. It's serious. I know. I spoke slowly, but I'm also serious about selling my house. It's merely real estate. My dad, dismissed. What important is family? Why is this happening to me again if family is so important? The question had been brewing inside me for days. What is the intended meaning of that? My dad's voice lifted. It means I've been bailing Justin out my entire life. My 17-year-old college fund. My credit score suffered for years as a result of the debt I co-signed when I was 23. He was never reimbursed for the $5,000 he failed to pay for his auto repair last year. Over the years, we were of great assistance to you. My father retorted his version of events, which was far from accurate. You gave me financial assistance when I once contested my name. We let you stay at our house the summer following your freshman year of high school. He gave me a weekly offer for 3 weeks while I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition for my sophomore year. I made the correction. My mother also mentioned that we occasionally bought you groceries. You once brought me a care package during my junior year finals. My dad's face flushed. You weren't brought up to maintain family harmony. The goal is not to maintain score. It has to do with accepting reality. Since I was 17, I have been financially independent. You've been there for Justin through all of his self-inflicted crises. You care about your brother, don't you? The voice of my mother broke. He might lose everything. Mom, what precisely did he lose his flat? That you co-sign for his job and pay the rent on his automobile. Something he can't hold for longer than a few months. That isn't fair, she objected. Is it? When did Justin last have a job that lasted longer than 6 months? Neither of them responded. I'm not implying that Justin is unimportant to me. Selling my apartment won't fix the true issue, I added, my voice becoming a little softer. The fact that your brother owes money to dangerous people is the true issue. My dad was adamant, no. The fact that Justin has never been held accountable for his conduct is the true issue. You always jump right in and solve it when he gets into problems. Parents do that for their kids. Justin may be 35 years old. Every time he moves in the tiny living room, my father expresses his anger. I didn't come here to listen to a non-parent give a parenting lesson. It hurt to be dismissed, but I persisted. Do you recall when Justin wrecked his second vehicle the next week? You got him another one. When my brakes need to be replaced, you instructed me to solve it on my own. As if in a praise, my mother remarked. You've always been more capable. Mom, that's not capability. That's having to rely on yourself while seeing others get countless second chances. This is jealousy. Then, my dad paused his pacing to give me a stern look. Because you're jealous. You're punishing your brother. This has nothing to do with jealousy. It's about condoning harmful conduct. He yelled, Save the psychobabble! Justin is in need of assistance right now. Years ago, he needed assistance. Not financial bailouts, but genuine assistance. My mom started to cry more. Avery, please, there is nowhere else for us to go. The weight of their disappointment and expectations was familiar to me. For years, I had been made to feel selfish for establishing boundaries while still bearing the weight of being the one in charge. I asked Justin what would happen once I sold my apartment and gave him the money. Then what? He will stand up again. My dad was adamant, like he did after you remortgaged your home for the first time. After you used my college funds, or after I co-signed his loan. It will be different this time. My mother gave me assurances about my challenges. What has changed, neither could respond. To pay for this home, I put in years of 60-hour work weeks. Silently, I said. Sometimes I forgo new clothes, trips, and even healthy meals. Everything I have worked for is embodied in this flat. It's merely a residence. My dad, dismissed. To you, perhaps. I see it as evidence of my independence. Maybe there was significance in all those sacrifices. So your brother's life is not as important as your pride. The accusation from my father was devastating. It's unfair, I objected. Life is unfair, he retorted. Family requires sacrifice. All of my life. I have sacrificed for this family. I tried to remain calm, but my voice rose. I get to draw the line. But when there is no threat to your brother, my mom begged. Mom, he's always in danger. That's the issue. My demands will always come last because there will always be another problem, debt or circumstance. At last, my father lost his patience. You will either have to help your brother and sell this flat, or you will no longer be a member of this family. Between us, the ultimatum lingered. Horrible in its brutality, but not surprising in some way. My father had previously threatened to cut me off for not allowing Justin to... Robert, despite her shock, my mother didn't disagree with him. Something broke inside of me. The final glimmer of hope is that my parents would one day regard me as being on par with my brother. You ought to go, in my opinion. Silently, I said, We won't depart till I leave my residence. Despite my internal turmoil, I interrupted in a firm voice. My seriousness must have been communicated by something in my tone. My dad reached for his coat. Without saying another word, my mother picked up her purse, and they departed. I slumped to the ground, trembling for hours as the door shut behind them. I sat there reliving the encounter and all the others that had come before it. The pattern was very evident, but I've been enmeshed in it for so long that I thought I would never be able to escape. However, a new resolve started to take shape as the dusk shadows spanned the floor of my apartment. It would be different this time. For me, not for Justin. I phoned the one person who had supported me through every family difficulty since college when my parents left. Zoe Sullivan is my closest friend. What did they do? I explained the problem to Zoe, and she exclaimed. Her indignation was consoling, a confirmation that I wasn't going overboard. In order to settle Justin's gambling debts, they want me to sell my apartment. I said it again, still finding it hard to believe. And that was family money. According to your father, how foolish of that man. He also said that if I didn't, he would cut me off from the family. Zoe gave a snort. For what reason would you no longer be able to help your brother every few years, despite everything? I laughed at her candor. When stated that way, this is crazy. Avery, really? You put a lot of effort into getting that place. For 2 years, you saved for the down payment for evenings by eating ramen for dinner 3 nights a week. I made the correction. It was splurge night on Wednesday. I included an egg. After laughing, we both instantly became serious. How will you respond? Zoe inquired. I said, I don't know. I feel like telling them to burn in hell. But then I consider Justin being jailed or confronted by these loan sharks. It is just what they want you to believe. They are using fear to manipulate you. But what if he does actually experience something? Zoe let out a breath. I love you. Avery, but you have to see the pattern. There is a crisis with Justin every few years. Each and every time, it's either life or death. Whenever you or your parents save him, and her words resonate each time, nothing changes. There was no denying the pattern. However, it's not your fault if I don't assist and something goes wrong. Firmly, Zoe said. Justin is 35 years old. He is accountable for his decisions. That's not how my folks see things. Your parents are contributing to the issue. He's been able to do this throughout his life. We spent hours analyzing the dynamics of years of family life. We were called with each example. The trend became more obvious. Justin caused problems. My folks went into a panic. I was supposed to make a sacrifice. The cycle then continued. I must end the cycle. At last. I responded. Yes, you do. For your benefit. Also, to be honest, for Justin's. I had trouble falling asleep after we hung up. My father's assertion regarding family funds kept coming up in my thoughts. I grew more irate the more I considered it. Over the years, how much had my family taken for me? I gave my firm's financial advisor, Tiffany Reynolds, who had become into a mentor, a call the following morning. I need expert guidance. I told her it wasn't client-related, but personal. I described the problem during lunch. Tiffany grew more worried as she listened without changing her expression. In my case, what advice would you provide a client? When I was done, I asked, to be honest, I advise them to avoid this financial situation at all costs. She said, family complicates matters, though. That's the issue. Tiffany tapped her plate thoughtfully with her fork. Have you ever figured out how much you have lost to your family over the years? Not precisely, no. Perhaps you ought to give it actual numbers. Sometimes the emotional decision becomes obvious when the hard data is presented. I looked through previous tax returns, bank statements, and other documents that evening. I meticulously recorded every dollar my parents had stolen or that I had had to pay to save them in a spreadsheet. Justin, I would have received $30,000 in interest over 15 years from my education fund, about 22,000 people. My co-signed loan was 12,000 that went into default. Higher borrowing rates and damage to the credit score of about 8,000 are the results. Emergency funds are transferred during different crises. At least 15,000 professional possibilities were lost because of budgetary limitations. Incalculable. Without accounting for inflation or missed opportunities, the total was an astounding almost $90,000 when I was done. Nearly enough for a sizable investment portfolio, graduate school, or a down payment on a second home. After printing the spreadsheet and verifying the calculations, I put it in a manila envelope. Then I took an action that I had never taken before. I wrote a formal letter explaining my terms to my parents, not an emotive appeal or a blank check, but well-defined limits with precise requirements. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to allow guilt or manipulation determine my financial decisions. I was taking control of the narrative. My mother texted me the following day, "Justin is currently staying with us. We must get together, please. I'll be home Saturday at 10 a.m., was my straightforward response. All three of you need to be there for the rest of the week. I got ready. A financial counselor with expertise in addiction difficulties met with me. I looked into programs for recovering from gambling addiction. I sought legal advice regarding the format of a formal loan contract. When Saturday arrived, I felt calm and prepared. I would no longer be a passive participant in the cycle of enabling that had characterized our family for decades, no matter what. I held the manila envelope with 15 years' worth of financial records while I awaited their arrival. It stood for years of sacrifice, unspoken animosity, and unrecognized injustice in addition to money. This time, the doorbell rang at exactly 10. Justin was standing between my parents when I answered the door, appearing both ashamed and defiant. The tipping moment had come, but I wasn't going to break this time. Justin's generally well-kept looks had gotten worse, and he looked awful. Unwashed hair, bloodshot eyes, clothes that draped loosely on his frame. He had lost weight, and the self-assured swagger that I had resented for years had vanished. I stepped aside to let the three of them into my apartment and said, "Come in." My mother sought to take charge of the matter right away. "Avery, we've been quite anxious. How come you haven't been returning our calls?" I needed time to reflect. I responded calmly and to get ready. "What should I prepare?" my dad asks with suspicion. "Let's talk about that." I nodded toward my modest dining table, where I'd set out coffee and water. "Let's take a seat." Around the table, we took our places. A family reunion that is uneasy. Justin averted his gaze from me and continued to gaze at his hands. "Have you decided yet?" My dad got right to the bone. "We're running out of time. What you mentioned regarding family finances has been on my mind." I started out cautiously. My mom got happier. "So you get it. All we're asking is that you do your part, the same way we've always helped you. To be honest, I've been thinking about how much I've done for this family over the years." My father cut in. "This isn't the time for complaints. There's a big problem with your brother." "I know that," I answered. "However, I believe we must confront the pattern that led us here before we can talk about remedies." "Which pattern?" My father's voice was contemptuous. "Your brother made a few errors. Humans are fallible." "They do," I concurred. "However, most people get knowledge from them. Justin hasn't been given the opportunity to learn from his—" "It's unfair," my mom objected. Justin spoke something for the first time. "Avery, just sell the fucking apartment. You've always been so arrogant toward us because of your valuable independence. I might wind up in jail in the interim. Or worse." I felt something ignited by his accusation. Self-righteous. In order to pay for education, I worked 3 jobs. I tried to rebuild my credit score after you failed on the loan I co-signed, and when our parents gave you my college money, I lived in apartments with black mold since that's all I could afford. You've spent 15 years making fresh messes, and I've spent 15 years cleaning up after yours." My mother gasped. "Avery." "We all know it's true." I insisted. We simply don't discuss it. You're punishing me today because of old history. Justin posed a challenge. This has nothing to do with punishment. The goal is to end a cycle that isn't beneficial to any of us, particularly you. Justin, the tolerance of my father wore thin. Enough about the psychology. Are you trying to sell this place? No, I answered firmly. I'm not. So why have we come here? He began to get up from his chair and made the demand. Because I have a different proposal. I put the envelope made of manila on the table. I want everyone to see this first. Though, I moved the envelope in my father's direction. Reluctantly, he opened it and took out the spreadsheet I had made. Justin kept looking at his hands as my mother bent over to observe. What is this? My father inquired, looking through the document. A breakdown of the total amount of money I have given this family over the years, mostly to Justin. Anger made my father's face flush. Have you been monitoring the score? No. I've been documenting things. There is a distinction. As my mother perused the itemized list, she appeared stunned. It can't be this much. Surely, I said. $90, $473. The conservative estimate is that, excluding potential costs and inflation. This is absurd. My dad turned red. However, I could see how the number affected him. His face had gone very pale. Is it every dollar on the list has documentation, which I contested, credit reports, loan documentation, and bank transfers. I have documentation of everything, for the first time. Raising his hands, Justin took a quick look at the spreadsheet. His face changed from one of defiance to one of embarrassment. What are you doing? My mom inquired. Her eyes began to well up with tears. Because I want everyone to know exactly what's involved. My flat is not the only one. Justin's bad decisions have cost me 15 years of financial stability, so you're not willing to assist, with a firm voice. My father came to an end. Your brother might not survive. And you're worried about your bank balance. I did not say that I would not assist. I corrected him. I refused to sell my apartment. This court their tension. What are you saying? With caution, my mother asked. I took out another envelope and set it down on the table. These are my terms. Words. The word was virtually spat out by my father. We are not business associates. We are family. I pointed out that you still consider my money like a family resource despite that distinction. This time, let's be explicit about the arrangement. I took out a few documents from the envelope. I have sought advice from attorneys and financial consultants. Only in these circumstances am I willing to assist Justin one final time. I presented the initial document. This material relates to a program for recovering from gambling addiction. Justin must sign up right away and finish the entire course of study. I'm not addicted to gambling, Justin muttered. You have more than $150,000 in gambling losses. What would you call it? I retorted. He didn't have an answer. I placed the second document on the table. This loan agreement is official. I'll give Justin enough money to pay off his most urgent debts, those that immediately endanger his safety. In exchange, he will sign this contract, agreeing to repay the loan with interest. A sibling agreement. My mother looked scared. Indeed, with precise conditions, due dates, and penalties for non-payment. This is ridiculous. My dad said, You have no faith in your own brother. I said plainly, History hasn't given me reason to. My remarks made Justin wince, but he said nothing. The third requirement, I added, setting another document on the table, is that Justin see a financial counselor with expertise in addiction treatment once a week. He can work with someone I've previously found. So what if I say no? At last, Justin gave me a direct look. I won't assist then. It's that easy. My father stood abruptly, his chair scrapping loudly across the floor. Emotional blackmail is what this is. No, I corrected him quietly. This is a limit. I'm ready to lend a hand, but not in a way that makes things worse. You don't have the authority to dictate to your brother. I am quite entitled to impose restrictions on my own funds. You had every right to refuse, I retorted, when Justin requested assistance. However, you never did. Across the table, my mother grabbed for my hand. Please, Avery. Without all these legal documents, isn't it possible for us to handle this as a family? For 15 years, Mom, we tried that strategy. It hasn't been successful. Justin had become silent as he gazed at the papers arranged on the table. His voice was hardly audible when he eventually spoke. She is correct. We all three turned to stare at him, startled. What were you saying? My dad insisted. She is correct. This time, Justin repeated more loudly. Almost anything. The admission, my problem, the pattern, and the enabling lingered, strong and unexpected. I'll sign the documents, he added. I'll attend the event, whatever it takes. I'll do it. My dad had a shocked expression. You don't have to accept this, Justin. We'll figure something other out. Dad, there's no other way, Justin answered, a fresh determination in his tone. I've been dragging all of you down with me while I flee from this for far too long. My mother started crying now. But it wasn't the scheming tears I'd seen so frequently. These appear sincere, the result of both grief and relief. She said to Justin, I just want you to be okay. He said, I haven't been okay for a long time. This might be what I need. My father stood there, a whirl of mixed feelings on his face. As he struggled to comprehend this change in family dynamics, he glanced from the spreadsheet to me and then to Justin. That's it. Then, at last, he asked me, these terms cannot be altered. Yes. I did confirm. This has nothing to do with retaliation or punishment. The goal is to end a vicious cycle. He took up the spreadsheet once more and gazed at the sum as though it were the first time he had ever seen it. His face had lost its color as the situation's truth finally seemed to set in. All this time, he whispered to himself. $90,000. I whispered. It's not about the money. It all comes down to identifying and altering patterns. When my father looked at me, I noticed something different in his eyes for the first time in my adult life. A flicker of respect, not disappointment or expectation. The conflict had reached its peak. But unlike all the others, this one concluded with a new understanding rather than my surrender. The balance of power had changed, possibly irrevocably. I felt as though the weight of years' worth of silent animosity had been lifted as Justin reached for the pen to sign the agreement. It would really be different this time. The weeks after our altercation were difficult, following Justin's signature on the contract. As promised, he signed up for the gambling addiction treatment. But because they weren't sure how to handle our connection in these new circumstances, my parents kept a tense distance. My mother called 3 weeks after I signed the contract. Her tone was tentative, even shy. Avery, how are you? I'm done. Mom, how are things going for you and Dad? We're adapting. She hesitated. Your dad is still taking it all in. Justin, too. She said. He's going to the program. Her speech had a hint of astonishment. He hasn't missed a single session in every day. I'm glad to hear that. We were awkwardly silent for a while. Unspoken tensions for 15 years. Not something that can be discussed in a single chat. What you mentioned has been on my mind. At last, my mother went on to discuss patterns. And I believe you may be correct. She obviously paid for the admission. We haven't always treated you fairly. It was more than I had ever received previously, but it wasn't a complete acknowledgement of everything that had occurred. Mom, I appreciate you saying that. She hurriedly added, your father might need more time. He is complex. I am aware. I reassured her that I didn't anticipate any sudden changes. Without the typical overtones of manipulation, we cautiously rebuilt bridges during our almost hour-long conversation. I felt cautiously optimistic after we hung up. A week later, Justin gave me a direct call, something he hardly ever did unless he was in severe need of cash. I should make amends, the counselor advised. He started clumsily. a step in the healing process. All right, I said without emotion. I have no idea where this was going. I've been a bad brother, he added. I also took advantage of Mom and Dad and you. But particularly you. It was always me and you who were in charge. I was angry with you because you made me appear inferior. Justin, no, let me finish, please. I must state this. He inhaled deeply. I felt envious of you. You succeed because of your discipline. Continually making mistakes and placing the blame on others was more convenient than attempting to fail on my own. I was astonished by his openness. I knew a Justin who would never acknowledge his weakness. As if reading my mind, he added, "The program is helping." Gambling is not the only aspect of it. It concerns all of the ways I have been evading accountability. I'm happy that it's beneficial. I meant what I said. Would you be interested in attending one of my family sessions next week? I realize I have no right to ask you anything. The therapist believes it might be helpful. It was an unexpected request. I'll give it some thought. I said I would. I contacted Zoe to analyze this new development after we hung up. In fact, he expressed regret without immediately requesting payment. She queried incredulously. I understand. I share your amazement. Do you think he's real? Given Justin's past? She had good reason to be skeptical. I acknowledged that I'm not sure, but this seemed different, more sincere. Will you be attending the family session? I let out a sigh. Most likely. I've made it this far. We might as well finish it. One of the most trying times in my life was the family counseling session. With the help of a composed voice therapist named Dr. Melissa Turner, Justin and I sat in a sterile room with my parents and started the grueling process of unraveling decades' worth of dysfunctional patterns. Dr. Turner clarified that the objective is not to place blame, but to comprehend how the activities of each family member impact the others. At first, my father sat with his arms crossed, obviously uneasy about the whole thing. However, Justin talked candidly about his addiction and the complicity that kept it going. My father's stiff stance relaxed in some way. He said to Justin, I always thought I was protecting you. I never thought I would be causing you pain. Rather by... When it was my turn to talk, I talked about how it felt to always be deprioritized while Justin received resources while I battled alone. I clarified that I don't hate the money per se. I hate what it stood for, that my needs were never prioritized. As she heard, my mother brushed away her tears. She said, I never saw it that way. You always seemed so capable to us. You didn't require our assistance. Everyone occasionally needs assistance. Gently, Dr. Turner pointed out that everyone must feel appreciated. Something had changed by the end of the session, but no miraculous healing had taken place. We had given names to dynamics that had been silent before. Later, in the parking lot, we had admitted injuries that had remained unresolved. My mother and Justin were talking to Dr. Turner when my father came up to me by himself. The spreadsheet, he started clumsily, the one you displayed to us. How about it? I've given it a lot of thought. He cleared his throat. I've talked to your mom about it. We wish to put things right. I did not make that to demand payment, Dad. I am aware of that, he responded. However, it is important. It matters what we took away from you. It was possibly the most straightforward recognition he had ever made, that my viewpoint was legitimate and my emotions were real. We can't pay it back all at once, he added, but we'd like to get started. We have a monthly transfer scheduled. You don't have to do that, but it's not much. Indeed, we do. He spoke firmly. For us, not just for you, for this family, little changes added up as the weeks became months. Justin started working with a financial counselor and was a consistent participant in his program. My parents began a little payback plan, sending money into my account every month that they could afford. Our discussions grew more candid and less tense. Of course, there were setbacks. It takes time for old patterns to change. When under stress, my father would sometimes become defensively blustery. In times of fear, my mother would resort to manipulating her emotions. Unlike in the past, Justin's moments of entitlement and self-pity were acknowledged and dealt with. We were gradually and painstakingly learning how to be a family. Justin got a position at a tiny marketing company 4 months after our altercation. Stable work with realistic expectations, rather than the high-flying role he would have previously sought. He relocated to a little flat that was truly within his means. I had never fully supported myself before. One Saturday over coffee, he informed me, "It's frightful." I don't know, but it's also satisfying. That's what we call adulthood. It's softly. He gave a wistful smile. I suppose it's better late than never. My relationship with my parents was still developing. A few months wouldn't be enough to reverse years of established dynamics. However, there was advancement. As a little token of appreciation for my financial skills, my father contacted to seek for my guidance on retirement planning. On the anniversary of my apartment purchase, my mother sent me a card that, rather than downplaying my accomplishment, celebrated it. In my case, the encounter had changed more than simply my ties with my family. My feeling of self had grown stronger as a result of my determination to resist the pressures of my family. I had created boundaries that went beyond money. They had feelings, psychological, essential to my development. I wasn't the responsible daughter tidying up family mess for the first time. The difference was that I was Avery Mitchell, a woman with limits and self-respect, a financial consultant, and an apartment owner. My life had changed in ways I could never have predicted 6 months after that fateful Sunday when my parents arrived at my home. My family dynamic underwent some amazing transformations, yet there were still some difficulties. After finishing the intense portion of his addiction treatment program, Justin continued attending weekly maintenance sessions. Even more unexpectedly, following his 3-month evaluation, he was given a minor rise and kept his position at the marketing agency. During one of our now regular Sunday phone talks, he acknowledged, "It's the longest I've held a job since college." It turns out that people notice when you truly put in the effort and show up on a regular basis. His newfound humility still surprised me. The conceited brother who had anticipated unending favors had been replaced by a more sensible individual who was more conscious of his influence on other people. The small monthly installments we had agreed upon in our official loan arrangement were being faithfully made by him. Although the payments were modest and more symbolic than significant, the constancy was more important than the sum. Both of my parents had evolved on their own. After our altercation, my father, Robert, at first kept a rigid distance. His pride had been severely damaged, and he found it difficult to adjust to the new family dynamic in which he didn't have complete authority. However, he unexpectedly called me after 3 months. In an uneasy tone, he continued, "I've been seeing someone." "A counselor." I was so shocked that I was unable to react right away. "Your mother thought it might help," he added, bringing patterns of comprehension into the void. "That's fantastic, Dad." At last, I succeeded. "Really?" He said that I've been studying a concept known as differentiation. It's about recognizing your kids as unique individuals with their own needs and personalities. "How is that going?" I asked thoughtfully. He let out a deep sigh. "It's challenging. It's probably more difficult than I anticipated to alter your perspective after 65 years. But I'm making an effort. Avery." His voice had never sounded so vulnerable. "I'd like to perform better." Karen, my mother, had adjusted on her own. She became aware of her part in facilitating Justin's behavior after joining a support group for families of addicts. At a rare mother-daughter brunch, she told me, "I always thought love meant solving problems for my children. I had no idea that it would occasionally entail letting them handle their own issues." They stuck to the simple payback schedule they had set up. Every month, a tiny deposit showed up in my account, nothing close to the entire sum shown in my spreadsheet, but a concrete recognition of the long-standing discrepancy. During these 6 months, my own journey had been just as significant. I began seeing a family dynamics specialist therapist named Diana Lawrence shortly after the altercation. During our first session, Diana told me, "What you did took tremendous courage." One of the most difficult things a person can do is to challenge ingrained familial norms. I started analyzing the complicated feelings I had repressed for years during weekly sessions. The animosity toward Justin and the pain brought on by my parents' partiality. The shame associated with setting limits. Diana clarified that as we begin to establish appropriate boundaries, guilt is normal. Prioritizing yourself feels terrible because you've been conditioned to prioritize the needs of others over your own for a long time, especially when it comes to family. I eventually discovered how to value myself without help from others. I started to realize that being the one who was always giving, fixing problems, or taking responsibility for relationships wasn't what made me valuable. This increased self-awareness went beyond my professional connections with my family. During performance assessments, I started to speak more assertively about my achievements. I worked on asking for help from friends, rather than providing it all the time. I met Ethan Rodriguez at a financial literacy session I was leading for a nearby community college 3 months into my therapy journey. He was a thoughtful professor of computer science with gentle eyes. He posed thoughtful queries regarding investing tactics for educators following the workshop. Our business talk led to coffee, which led to supper, which developed into the most wholesome friendship I had ever known. Ethan respected my boundaries and made an equal contribution to our relationship, in contrast to other partners who had been attracted to my caregiving instincts. I used to feel bad about staying late at work because of my ex. During our 5th date, I came clean. She referred to it as prioritizing work over herself. "That's unfair," Ethan said. "A portion of who you are is your career. How come someone would want you to downplay that?" It was a welcome response from him, an acknowledgement of my completeness as opposed to an effort to take something away from me. His response confirmed my trust when I finally told him about my family history. "You did something very courageous," he replied. "It's difficult to break generational patterns. I still feel bad sometimes. I acknowledge it." "You do, of course." Nevertheless, guilt does not imply wrongdoing. His insight stood in sharp contrast to previous relationships in which I was accused of being self-centered for setting limits. During these months of change, Zoe was a constant source of comfort. She was pleased with my development, offered a secure place to digest the continuing family work, and, as necessary, reality checks. As we celebrated the 6-month anniversary of the altercation over dinner, she told me, "I'm proud of you. You're doing more than just establishing limits. You're altering the system for your whole family. Sincerely." I said, "I couldn't have done it without you." "No sense. This strength was always there in you. All you needed was authorization to use it." These personal transformations coincided with the flourishing of my professional life. My career was now the focus of the energies that had been diverted by familial drama. I trained junior consultants, assumed leadership positions in client projects, and even started creating a financial literacy program for young adults, something I had long envisioned but never had the resources to implement. I threw a little dinner party in my apartment 6 months after that Sunday that changed my life. The apartment that I had declined to sell, Zoe, Ethan, and, amazingly, my parents and Justin were seated around my table. It was easier to have the conversation than I would have thought possible 6 months ago. We didn't ignore the past, but we also didn't spend all of our time thinking about it. We were learning how to spend time together in a new way, more genuine, more truthful, and more considerate of others' boundaries. I understood that maintaining my apartment had not been the real benefit of standing my ground as I observed these individuals eating together in my house. It had been giving my family the chance to flourish while also helping me regain my feeling of self-worth. The recovery wasn't finished. Maybe it would never be completely. Occasionally, old patterns reappeared and needed to be corrected gently but firmly. Slowly but surely, trust was being restored, one steady step at a time. However, the change was genuine. I had made room for something better to arise by deciding to no longer engage with the dysfunctional family system. Property was no longer the only reason I refused to sell my place. It was about proving that love doesn't require unending sacrifice and ending cycles of enablement. The lesson that stuck with me the most was that sometimes stopping saving someone is the most loving thing you can do for them, in a manner that another financial bailout could never have. I had truly helped Justin recover by establishing boundaries with him. And I had given my parents the chance to see me, really see me, maybe for the first time, by being firm with them. That night, as we were finishing dessert, my father cleared his throat and demanded attention in his usual manner. "I want to say something," he declared. There was silence at the table, a little of the old tightness coming back. It was 6 months ago. Family, to me, meant always saying yes and always saving the day. He paused, clearly trying to think of anything to say. I was mistaken. I learned from Avery that saying no is sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do. As glasses clinked around the table, he raised his glass to boundaries and to my daughter, who dared to set them. I experienced a deep sense of tranquility. A significant corner had been turned, but the voyage was far from over. The prospect of a healthy home for all of us was made possible by my refusal to compromise my house and consequently myself. Have you ever had to refuse to compromise with relatives who had unreasonable expectations of you? How did you respond to that challenging discussion? Please share your stories in the comments section below. For more tales on finding resilience in trying family circumstances, please think about clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel if this one spoke to you. I sincerely appreciate you listening. Additionally, keep in mind that establishing limits is not selfish. It's a self-respecting action that can eventually result in more wholesome relationships for all parties.